Most people use AI like a chatbot. You go in, you have a little bit of a back and forth, you get an answer, you copy paste it, and you move on. Now, something for you to think about is that those answers are grounded in two things. First, it's the open internet, and second, any memory that AI has built up about you. That could be your past chat history, documents you've uploaded, and that's it. So, what this really means is that when you research, it's not grounded in sources that you trust, it's grounded in the generic internet. And when you write, you end up creating content that sounds like everybody else. Your perspective disappears and you generate things that really anyone else could have written. I'm Sanks, one of the co-founders of Recall, and I'm going to show you my 6-part workflow with Recall that takes the opposite approach. How to bring your knowledge and your perspective into AI, and how to reuse that knowledge every time you research, create, or publish. You still get all the power of AI, but you just stop losing yourself along the way. And you end up with a repeatable loop where your knowledge compounds and you end up writing things that only you could have come up with. The concrete example I'm going to be using throughout this is something really personal. I'm trying to learn about SEO and AEO, answer engine optimization. If you're unfamiliar with that, that's basically how do you ensure that your brand shows up in an AI search. Look, my background is in analytics and strategy, so this is a whole new world for me. And if I went the traditional route, I went to ChatGPT and I said, teach me about SEO, make me a checklist, I'd still end up producing the same content that looks and sounds and feels like everybody else. Instead, the 6-part workflow that I'm going to show you will be grounded in my knowledge, my thinking, and my own best practices. This is just my example, but honestly, it can be taken to anything that you're doing, whether that's preparing for a meeting, doing research or a deep dive, learning something new, or even just creating some social posts. Let's break down the 6 stages. So first, it starts with research. Again, instead of going to ChatGPT and starting with an open search, it will start with being grounded in your knowledge first. That means your chat prioritizes your existing knowledge before going wider. The second is understanding. Look, we can go research and have access to more information today than we ever had before. But it's still critical that we understand, that we comprehend, that we've truly digested that information, and so understanding will be part 2. Part 3 is now about creating these best practices. I'm sure you noticed that when you're using AI and you're writing, whether it's an email or blog, maybe you have a checklist you want to go through. This creates a repeatable loop of best practices that you can create and build upon, which means whenever you're producing content, you can always run it past your best practice checklist that is growing and compounding over time. The fourth, and I think the most important, is your thinking. And what this means is before you even start generating content, you first bring in your perspective, your unique thoughts, and your unique ideas. And that's actually critical, not just in terms of ensuring we don't lose ourselves, but even in things like general content creation, it ensures that we stay unique, we stay fresh, and we're actually using creativity when it comes to generating content, even if we're leaning on AI for a little bit of help along the way. Which brings me to the 5th part, and this is about generating, not conjuring. I say conjuring because I feel so often I read something and I'm like, where did this come from? It feels like it's just been risen out of nowhere. And I feel that's what happens when you're using AI to generate content. And this is about combining. So combining best practices, combining your research, and combining your best thinking to generate content that is high quality, meeting a good best practice and standard, but again, is uniquely yours. And the 6th part is bringing it all together. So when you're right at the end of your workflow, you're about to send that email, you're about to publish that blog, just doing your final cross-referencing and sanity check. And it's more than just a spell check. It's more than just putting something in and saying, hey, do a quick spell check. This is about fact checking and again, using your knowledge and your sources to do that. So quick recap, it's research, it's understanding, it's creating best practices, it's bringing in your thinking, it's generating and not conjuring, and it's that final step of cross-referencing. Well, let's get to it. Let's start with part 1, the research flow. So as a comparison, I'm going to head to ChatGPT and ask, I'm trying to learn about SEO and AEO. I'm completely new to this. who are the experts in the field that I can learn from? What are the fundamentals that I need to know? And how do I go from knowing nothing to being an expert over the weekend? Okay, I mean, that was a really fast answer. It breaks down SEO and AEO, lists me a couple people I should learn from. Not everyone here is looking familiar, so maybe there's a few I missed, but I actually see some critical people who aren't on this list. People like Eli Schwartz, people like Neil Patel. Okay, I mean, this is a potential starting point. There's a little bit of a plan, but let's have a look at these sources, because this is where my point comes from. So if we look on the right, what we can see is there's a guide that seems to have come up. There's a lot of Reddit posts in here. So a lot of this has really been grounded in Reddit posts. What's interesting is, I mean, obviously I'm learning by AEO, but these sources are actually one of the fundamental parts of it, being able to make your way into these sources. And so it's founded on, okay, a bit of a blog from a place called Conductor and about 3 different Reddit posts on the subject. Let's go ahead and take the exact same prompt and try it out in Recall. So I'm in Recall, I'm in our chat with knowledge base, and I'm going to go ahead and select GPT 5.5. Here, I'm going to use Recall plus Web, because when I'm researching, the point I wanted to make was, I don't want to start from scratch. I don't want to have a blank answer. Maybe there's a couple things I know about AEO. A couple people have recommended me a podcast here or there. Now, when I ask this question in Recall, it's going to first prioritize my trusted sources and then go a little wider. The second thing is, you've seen I've selected GPT 5.5. If you're interested, I did make a model where I compared Opus 4.8 to GPT 5.5. In Recall, when you're on the max plan, you can select one of the AI models of your choice. And for research, I found GPT 5.5 to be really strong. So let's see what comes up. Okay, I mean, this is interesting. It starts with a warning that I won't become an expert over the weekend, but I can go from 0 to dangerously competent. That would be the goal. But I appreciate the honesty here. Okay, and this is what I was expecting. So Ethan Smith, for example, he's been on Lenny's podcast. I love Lenny's podcast. If that's not something you've heard of, highly recommend it. And he really interviews experts in the field. So I know that these are sources I can trust. So here it brings up a podcast that I had saved to my knowledge base on AEO. It lists the exact source. Eli Schwartz, this was a book I'm actually reading. Product-led SEO in the AI era. So this is actually his book, but a new podcast with an updated take on it. And then Brian Dean, who has a full SEMrush course. So this is really interesting because I saved this actually, as you can see, quite a while ago, but it still brings it up. Some of the fundamentals of SEO are still important today. So the point I'm making here is this is now grounded on sources that I've been saving into Recall. But let's be fair, I actually want to know what might I be missing, because first Recall has prioritized my knowledge, and now I need to see what I might be missing. Oh, before I get to that, what I love is I actually have a full step-by-step process. So even if I compare this to the answer that I got from ChatGPT, here I've got some fundamentals, and a very rough sort of what to do in one weekend. But what I love with this output is that it really goes into a bit more detail in terms of what to do Saturday morning, some practice exercises, a Saturday afternoon. I mean, the level of detail here really is insane. And again, of course, it is GPT 5.5. That is the same model that I'm using here. And now I actually have a full plan, as well as all of the sources that it's listed. And here you can see these are, again, sources from my knowledge base. But let's ask a fair question. Let's say, who am I missing as experts that are not in my knowledge base? Are there other people I'm missing, recent content that's coming out that I'm missing, or experts that I should be following? So this is prompting it to go beyond my knowledge base, not just focusing on the content that I've been saving to recall. Okay, so here it tells me who the biggest gaps are. So this is interesting. This does align with what I saw in the previous answer. And it's that same source, the conductor, which we had seen earlier. Literally, Ray came up. This time it's from a different piece of content. So what's interesting here is I don't see any Reddit sources. So all of this had come from various different YouTube videos and a couple different blogs. So what I'm seeing here is when recall is now going wider and doing a web search, it makes recommendations based on the types of sources and the types of content it sees I already trust. So let's have a look at these sources that it's now referenced. Interesting, and a YouTube video that didn't come up previously. Okay, so this is something that I definitely would want to take a deeper look at and store in my recall knowledge base. I want to give you a bit more context though, because perhaps you're watching this, you're not familiar with recall, and you might be thinking, what just happened in this conversation? Where did all of these sources come from? So pausing for a quick preview of recall. So recall is an AI knowledge base, which means all of the sources that I've been saving, and I have over 5,000 sources saved in the last 3 years, now live in this knowledge base, whether that's a YouTube video, a podcast, a PDF, or, and this is the important part, notes that I've taken myself. So it's not just about saving content, it can even be notes that I've taken myself. We have a rich block text editor, so I can take tables, to-do lists, quotes, etc. I'm really not limited in my note-taking ability at all. If this is ringing a bell and you're thinking, hey, this feels a little bit like Notebook LM, we definitely have some similarities in terms of features, but Notebook LM is really focused on a bounded source-based research. You can't take your own rich text notes, and recall is more of lifelong knowledge management. So a quick preview here. In my recall knowledge base, as I've mentioned, I've got a ton of content. So here I have everything I've been saving when it comes to AI in 2026, all of the trends, all of the podcasts I'm staying on top of. I have all of my research on health and longevity, my protocols, my own blood work results, my own nutrition plan. And then I even have really fun things like all of my movies, my recipes. I take my movies very seriously, and something really powerful and fun is when I do research, just like you've seen now, and I ask for a recommendation, it's not just a general recommendation from ChatGPT, it's grounded in my sources. So I could get a movie recommendation tailored to my taste. So that's a little bit about recall. You save content, it all gets automatically organized for you. So I didn't add the majority of these tags. Recall figures out where to put it based on what you've been curating and saving. And as you've already seen, you can chat with all of it. So when you're researching, it's now grounded in trusted sources. It knows my taste and the things that I like. And when it makes a recommendation, it's based on this knowledge as the foundation versus just a generic search on the internet. So just showing you a small piece about that loop, this was an incredible chat with a bunch of resources. I don't want to lose it. And so I can click add to notebook. And what happens is this now becomes another piece of content added to my recall knowledge base. I'll go ahead and tag it as SEO and AEO. So it's going to be living alongside all of my other SEO and AEO content, from TikToks with hot tips to those podcasts that we've just taken a look at. So that's sort of the first phase of research in terms of having a basic chat, but it doesn't just end there. Now I've saved that source. As you've seen, it's now formed part of my knowledge base, meaning when I research again, it's already aware of what I've been saving and the people that I'm interested in. But let's go ahead and take a deeper look at this YouTube video that was recommended to me by the chat. And let me show you a little bit about how I could now take this and go deeper in terms of research. So instead of just having the source and some answers, I might want to commit to learning a little bit more here. For something like this, I'd go ahead and click the Recall browser extension. So there's a couple ways that you can add content to your Recall knowledge base. With the extension that we have here, So you can see almost instantly, I've clicked that, I've got a summary which I can read or listen to. I can also paste in a link in the app, but one of the best parts is that we also have a mobile app. So sometimes you're out and about, people are giving you recommendations, you're having ideas, you can just share content directly with the Recall mobile app. Here, this was actually tagged as AI in 2026. It's not wrong, but I actually want to put it in that SEO and AEO folder, or tag rather, that I had shown you. And what you can see is I have a little bit of a summary here, so I can skim through the summary, or I can actually just ask a question. What's interesting here is, yes, I am just chatting with this video, but I could also say at SEO and AEO, and that I'm not just chatting with this video, I'm also chatting with all of that content, which I've just shown you here under SEO and AEO in my knowledge base. This is a really important point. It means that when I'm researching or now consuming this content, I'm not even just consuming it as an individual piece of content. I can bring in all of that past knowledge that I've been saving into Recall when asking a question. So for example, I could say something like, what are the key learnings about GEO from this video? Is there anything in this video that wasn't included in my knowledge base in terms of what I've been saving on SEO and AEO that I need to be made aware of? Something I just want to point out here is you might notice this deep research tag. And if you're familiar with Perplexity, Perplexity has a deep research mode, and we have the same, but here you can even see it's specifically performing it on my knowledge base. So it found 14 cards related to this content, and it's actually going a little bit deeper in there. Let's have a look at this answer, and we can bring it out here. Okay, so this is something we had noted. SEO still matters, but just doing SEO isn't enough. Okay, this is interesting. AI search is fragmented by platform. And now if something has now piqued my interest, hey, maybe I actually want to listen to the full video here. I can just hit,
I've gone through this.
I just hit that blue chip and you can see it's jumped to the exact moment in this podcast. So I could actually listen to the exact point.
Top 5, for whatever it is. And so for this one, it's no surprise in terms of AI. If we look,
I mean, I'm actually genuinely interested right now, but I am recording a video, so it's something I will come back to. But what's really great here is now you can see while I'm researching, I've been recommended a piece of content. It's been saved to my knowledge base. I'm navigating through this video quite carefully in terms of where is it worth me spending my time. And maybe I actually want to commit to the full listen. This seems like it's got some meaty content in here, a couple things that I haven't noticed before. So this might be worth my full listen. And so what Recall has enabled me to do is understand where gaps are based on my current learning, as well as show me the exact moments where things were mentioned so I can spend my time with intention. Research can often feel like a very big time suck. You can be spending your time on content that's not so relevant. You might not be navigating it as effectively as you could be. And Recall really helps as this pillar to really spend your time with intention, but then also say, hey, this might be worth the full listen or the full watch or the full read. I'm going to spend my time here. I can then also add this to the notebook. So what this does is this now gets added to the Recall notebook. Just to explain the concept a little bit, in the browser extension, you have the notebook, and that's where you can save your chat outputs or generate quick actions. Here you can see you can generate a concise summary, or you can just take your own notes. So I can say, this reminds me of, whatever it might be. This can really act as a full note taker, but also bringing AI into it. So that's really a beautiful hybrid. It also has the reader. So this is just the full transcript of that YouTube video. And something interesting that we'll get into in a bit more detail, maybe in a different video, because connections are a whole topic of its own. But what Recall has done here is it's actually extracted key concepts from this video and linked it to other pieces of content. It really is a fascinating feature, especially when it comes to research. So for example, if we take a look here, we can see it mentions Google Search Console. That's obviously a really interesting topic when it comes to understanding search, a critical thing you need to be looking at. And I can see that's mentioned in several other podcasts and videos that I've been saving. I can also create my own connections, but again, I don't want to go into too much detail on connections just yet. It's a really rich feature and definitely does help when it comes to research, but really takes it to a whole other level of depth. A quick thing I will show you though is once I open this up in Recall, I can actually see a visual representation of all of those connections. So you can come in here, I can see how this is related to Microsoft Bing, which is of course another search engine, and how that becomes another fundamental topic in all of the things I've been doing on AI and AEO. Again, I won't go into too much detail here. I actually have a great tutorial on graph view if this is an angle that you want to go into, but I'll pause it for here when it comes to research. Next, we're going to move on to understanding. When it comes to part 2, understanding, I might be consuming a lot of content, saving it in different places, but you do actually want to understand if you've grasped this, if you've fully understood and digested this. And this is where the Recall quiz feature is actually just a really fun way to ensure that this actually sticks. It means that you can speak confidently on the subject, you understand it deeply, and you're not just overly leaning on AI to find content for you, spit it out and give it to you your way, maybe use it and manipulate it and write something, but instead actually truly test. So let's test this video that we've just gone through. What you can do is click generate questions. And here you can see there's a whole bunch of options that you have. So you can test yourself either on just the reader, which is that transcript in this case, or include your notebook. So this is great because, for example, I've been reading that book on product-led SEO from Eli Schwartz. Now, I might have a lot of learnings that I'd want to add to my Recall knowledge base that isn't just living in a YouTube video or podcast, and I can actually test myself on that. I can pick the types of questions I'm interested in. I can pick the difficulty level. I can choose whether to include explanations, hints, and this is a really interesting toggle, but it's about whether I want to include it in my spaced repetition review. Pause on that for 1 second while this generates, just so I can take a moment to explain to you what spaced repetition is. So here's my quiz. I can start it right now, and I won't actually take it now because I didn't watch those YouTube videos yet, but you can go through all of these questions. It's timed, it tests you, and you almost walk away with a bit more of an understanding of how much you know or where you might be missing something. Couple other fun features here is if you are learning in a group or you have friends who are interested in a similar topic, you can turn any of these quizzes into a challenge. So if you have a look here, this is now a public challenge. Anyone can sign up, take this quiz on this YouTube video or podcast or whatever topic you're interested in, and you can get a little bit competitive if you want with your friends. I will watch the video first, take the quiz, and then share this challenge in the link if there is anyone watching who is trying to learn about AEO as well. And let me come back to that concept of spaced repetition. So the idea here is we all have a forgetting curve. It's a very natural thing, which is that if you consume content or you learn something, you will, after a certain amount of time, without repeating that content, forget it. Essentially what Recall then does is use a scientific technique called spaced repetition, which is about offsetting that forgetting curve and resurfacing content at the right interval. So just as you're about to forget something, Recall resurfaces it, and the more you get a question correct, the less Recall will ask you about it. The more you get it incorrect, the more Recall will resurface it. So if you head over to this little hack, you can see that I have 150 questions to review. I've lost my streak, which is really embarrassing, but we do have a daily streak where you can track, are you on progress? Are you tracking your progress? You can have a look at your stats over time and also look at how much you're actually learning, how much is stuck to long-term memory where you've mastered it, and how much you still need to learn. All of these now live under questions. So I could come in here and filter on, let's just say everything under SEO, which is just that question we've seen now. If I had multiple cards that I was reviewing under SEO, I could go ahead and select it and quiz myself on it right now. So again, I won't take it right yet, but that is the way that you can do it. I've been doing this more when it comes to health, longevity, and AI, and putting this into practice with SEO and AEO will form part of my new routine so that I can confidently say that this is something I'm understanding and learning beyond just consuming and regurgitating. And this now brings us to part 3, best practices. So for part 3 on best practices, I'm now back in Recall's chat, and this time I'm going to add context. So you can use this @ symbol and I can select SEO and AEO. I showed this to you earlier, but essentially the concept is now it's bringing in everything I've saved under this bucket of SEO and AEO. So it's referencing that in chat. And I'm going to move this to just recall only. What that means is I'm not doing a web search anymore. I'm actually just leaning on trusted sources that I've now curated. Because when you come to developing a best practice, what it's grounded in, where those answers are coming from are actually really important. You don't want to be generating guides and best practices and checklists where the sources of that information you can't truly trust. So here I've gone ahead and selected that. I'm going to stay with GPT 5.5 because again, I'm still a little bit in research mode. I'm not quite in writing mode yet. So sticking with this. And what I would say is, if for example, now I'm about to write a blog, I could say something like, generate a best practice guide for what steps I should follow to ensure my content is both SEO and AEO optimized when I write a blog. Also generate a specific checklist that I can look at. I want it to be really holistic, looking at metadata, schema, FAQs, and anything else that you found in my knowledge base that is relevant for me to go through before posting my blog. Okay, so here we go. Before writing, start with the real question, not just the keywords. That's interesting. It's a different approach than with SEO. And so here I've got an entire checklist, headings, blog structure, etc. And what's really powerful is I can actually see the sources of where it's coming from in this checklist. So here you can see it speaks about originality. This was mentioned specifically in the Lenny's podcast on the Ultimate Guide to AEO. And if I was interested on where exactly this came from, I can just click on it. And it takes me to the exact moment in this podcast where it was mentioned, taking me back to the exact timestamp.
Think about, like, if you go to Google, no offense, Mr. SEO, but if you go to Google these days, it's just like a bunch of unuseful stuff, just like hyper SEO'd content.
And what's really nice is it takes me back to the exact source where something was mentioned. So when I'm generating this best practice, I see the sources it's grounding from. I can even recap, re-jog my memory in terms of where exactly it's pulling from. Awesome. And here is my full checklist. And so what I'm going to do now, I see all of the sources that it's pulled from. It's sources that I trust. And I can now add this to my notebook, open it in here. And I will save this under SEO and AEO / best practices. And essentially what's happened here is I've now gone and researched my content. I've understood it, and I've now created a best practice grounded in sources of truth that I trust. If I learn new things, if I have new ideas, I'm reading and I'm learning about the subject, I can always come back and add it to this notebook in Recall. So this guide is growing and compounding as I learn more about the subject. So this is best practices in Recall. I think already just seeing those sources and being able to reference it shows you the power of being able to put your own knowledge at the center of the conversation and not just have generic conversations with the internet. And now for part 4, I think the most important part, your thinking. And I really think it's the part that we're forgetting about. So often, if you're looking first to AI for an answer, you end up biasing your thinking, you limit your creativity. And so I just highly recommend going old school, if you will, and just starting with a blank page. So in Recall, you can come in here, take a blank note, and just write out all of your thoughts and ideas. For this example, I wanted to write a blog post, which will be about how Recall compares to ChatGPT. And it will be really easy for me to just ask AI to generate this blog because it's got all of my information. But I really think this is a critical step that I encourage you not to skip. Start on a blank page, start with your own thinking, and just brainstorm. I think you've noticed in the video, I'm using Whisperflow. It's just a voice to text converter. I feel like when I do that, I'm faster, but I'm also just more creative. I'm ideating, and I'm almost unlimited. In a way, this is sort of the beauty of AI and this type of workflow. I'm not trying to precisely create something right now. I'm brainstorming, I'm thinking, I'm ideating. So we'll fast forward this bit, but here I go. ChatGPT versus Recall blog. Okay, so that is my brain dump. And now it's time to generate. So when it comes to generate, I do also want to look at, let's say for a ChatGPT versus Recall blog, what content has already been ranking on this topic. And so I've saved a bunch of things into my Recall knowledge base. It's here under ChatGPT alternative. So these were a couple blogs and sources that were being used as sources for chat answers. So if you go to Google AI mode and you say, what's the best ChatGPT alternatives, looking at where those sources are coming from, these were some of the really important blogs. I save this here and into my Recall knowledge base because when I generate, which is the fifth stage, I want to ensure that I'm combining my thinking, which is the foundation, along with some of the best practice and layouts that I'm seeing here. So let's head back to chat with knowledge base. And this time we're going to look at everything I've saved under ChatGPT alternative. And then we're also going to have a look at my blog, which was called ChatGPT versus Recall blog. And now I'm switching into Claude Opus 4.8. I'm staying just in Recall. And again, picking Claude because I think it's really fantastic when it comes to writing. And this is my preference. That may change with the new model dropping every other day, it feels like. And now I'll go into this last stage. So I'd like to write a blog on ChatGPT versus Recall. I want to rank for the keyword ChatGPT alternative, but please reference the existing blogs that are already ranking. Is there a best practice to take into account? How should I think about structuring it? Can you produce this blog for me? Okay, this is a great answer because first it's actually giving me some guidance again on how to even think about the blog and the structure, and then it goes into writing this full draft for me. And this is really the difference between conjuring. Conjuring we mentioned earlier, where you would just get all of this out of nowhere. Instead, it's truly grounded in all of my thoughts and ideas that I've just started this blog with. Making sure there's a comparison table, comparing to other alternatives. Awesome. So I'll be honest, I wouldn't just take this, copy and paste it and publish. I'd spend a little bit more time with this content, going back and forth and making it my own. So I can add it to my notebook. And here I have the full blog, and I'm going to spend a bit of time going through the blog, changing it up a bit, making it my own. And once I'm happy with it, I'll be ready to publish. But before that, the last stage is cross-referencing. And you can do that in Recall, or you can do it with the actual browser extension. I'm going to show you the two parts. So if I head back to actually chatting right here, so let's go into split screen view and let's talk about the chat right here. let's bring up that best practice that we just wrote. So we wrote our blog best practice. Let's reference it here and let's say something like, can you run a full check of this blog against the best practices we just put together on ensuring that this is both SEO and AEO optimized? Please also remove any M dashes and unnecessary colons. In case you're wondering what's happening with chat here, this is the same chat that's been running in the browser extension, now on a single card, or previously where we've been spending some time, which is chat with knowledge base. Perfect, and now it's run that audit. And this is really critical. So there's a lot of technical SEO that was missing, no markup, no schema, of course. What's great is I can now take this, use this to build my blog, and then run one last final check. So let's actually go to the real blog that I did end up publishing on this topic. And so here we have the blog I ended up publishing. I spent a lot of time building it out, but it's live, and maybe I actually want to do a final check on it. So coming in here, I click the Recall browser extension, and what it's doing, it's now feeding this blog as a final stage back into Recall. And here it's going to have access to the metadata, the schema, everything that it needs to check. I can come into chat here and let's reference that best practice once again. And let's say, please can you run a final SEO and AEO checklist on my now published blog? Okay, and here I see a couple things that I've missed that I need to check. And this just ensures that I've now not only just checked the input, I've also checked the output. And that wraps up the last stage for cross-reference. Look, I hope that this was helpful and maybe opened you up to a new way of using AI with your knowledge and your thinking. Again, this is just a workflow for learning something new like AEO, but maybe you're learning a completely different topic. Recall has completely helped me ramp up on new topics and also ensure that I've been spending my time with intention. And now it really is my right-hand man all day, every day, when I'm writing my social posts, writing emails, even just giving feedback to the team. I love using Recall because it's now grounded in my sources, my thinking, and I know that I'm always leaning on that when it comes to using AI. Hope this was useful. Let me know if you try out this workflow or if you have other workflows that are similar or anything that I might be missing. And yeah, keep us posted. Cheers.